Hey guys, this will be video 10 for the how to build a 58 Explorer replica. Sometimes using Stuart McDonald parts, but definitely using Stuart McDonald paint. Nitrocellulose lacquer, I just got that in today, so we'll cover that in a little while. And then we'll talk about fretboard and the highs, the lows, and the good stuff. Some good news, but mostly bad news in this video. Won't be able to use this fretboard, which really sucks. But once the video ends, you'll see my reasoning behind it. It's just way too thin, way too thin, and not even close for like if you were to come in with some maple veneer and build it up under the bottom and try to make things magically go away. So it's not a dead fretboard. It's definitely usable, but just it won't be usable on this guitar primarily because we're running P90s in this thing, and then we're also running the pick guards. So that's what this video is going to entail, is me processing through when to. I mean, to hell with it. You know, if you're this far into a job and you're doing pearl work, go ahead and do the work, but go ahead and make the plans that you're probably going to change gears and have to redo the fretboard. But nonetheless, over the holidays, I had nothing else going on, so I went ahead and did finish that. And I was kind of having high hopes, and that's what I'm going to cover in this video, that there's a possibility that would be able to use it. But I'll go ahead and cover this. What happened? I came right out of the gate with some not thin stock. It's just that the thickness that I had was like the finished target of a fretboard that is right at the edge of getting too thin. So in other words, everything would have been perfectly fine and was going to work out well. However, once I got it on the jig and I started verifying flatness, I realized that I needed to do a little bit of center line relief work. And see, this was after the pearl was in. And it was like, oh, you got to be effing kidding me! You can't work with a fretboard, you know. And I'm going to exaggerate, but you can't work with a fretboard if it's like a roller coaster. It wasn't a roller coaster. It was a little bit down here. There was some issues in the middle where it was a little bit low right here, and I needed a perfectly flat, true line because once it glues down, it's got to be true. And even before you machine it. And I'm going to try not to just, let me check the time, 3 minutes. Okay, so we know there's an issue with the fretboard right out of the gate. We're cutting it way too close, and that's okay if it's your own project because, like I said, you can come in here. I don't like doing this kind of crap, but I have done it on some guitars before, but so few times I can't even remember it was years ago, 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 years ago. It hasn't been done on any jobs lately, but if you've got a situation like this where you're in trouble and you're like trying to stretch wood, well then yes, you definitely can epoxy, because you have your clamping cauls. You know, if you got really high quality clamping caul and a really nice flat surface under here, you could tight bond glue this fretboard to this piece of maple veneer. Like if you've got a real nice long piece of maple veneer and do some like C-clamp pressure where we're talking, 60 foot-pounds of pressure, really, like torque, really torqued out compression. But nonetheless, what have you done? You've created a plywood fretboard and neck, and I don't care. There's no way you can say, oh well, it's an engineered laminate. No, BS. It's a plywood, because you would have your mahogany neck lower, which you spent all this time doing all this phenomenal work, and then you're going to have to glue it down. After you finish it, you're going to have to glue it to the neck lower, which I always call these the neck lower, and then obviously this is the fretboard or this is the fretboard, and then after it all goes together, well, it's a guitar neck. Uh, and there's nothing wrong with doing this. And would it change the tone considerably? Uh, I don't know. And see, that's what I don't like. If I don't know, but I do know that all the guitars that I've built the last 5 to 7, 10 years, whatever, they sound effing incredible because of the way I'm able to glue them together or either epoxy them together. And I don't like the idea of right here in the 11 o'clock hour where we've got a phenomenal custom build going together, uh, doing that type stuff right there. And would that save the day? Even that wouldn't save the day. That's how thin it is. So it would almost take like two veneers, or not necessarily two veneers. You could come in with some really nice Honduran, which is fairly. And Ed, we're not doing this with your guitar. I'm just talking about off the top of my head, general, because I'm already getting ready to order your new fretboard from Stewmac. But this one was an all handmade fretboard because, and I'll talk about this fretboard in a little while because it's so vintage and it's so rare and it's so beautiful, and it's just so it so sucks because I didn't get to use it. But neither here nor there. I just know that the only way I could have pulled it off is if I had come in and done this laminate work in between the lower and the fretboard. And where I was going with this is you could just epoxy this, or you could tight bind glue this to a thick piece of mahogany and then put it on your table saw. Because, see, you have an S4S board on the back that you epoxied it to, and then you just set your table saw up, and then you just machine it however thick you want, whatever laminate you want left. But nonetheless, you still have an engineered fretboard, which we don't want because of the possibility of losing a little bit of the tone. And also, I'm looking at it from the standpoint, I don't want to work myself to death trying to achieve a repaired guitar that was never intended to be a repaired guitar. Okay, so it's a custom build. Let's build it right out of the gate. And is this going to get thrown in the burn pile? Hell no, of course not. I'm going to do all this engineered stuff some other time because I don't have a problem putting it on one of my guitars, and whether it sounds good or hell, I'll probably would even forget that I even did it. But for a client, you don't want to do that type of stuff. So with that said, that's why I wanted to do this video and just talk about if you got yourself in this pickle, how would you get yourself out? And that's how I would be repairing it for myself. Like if I had a tour, or 2 months from now, which I don't, I'm not a touring guitar player, but if I had a gig that was really important that I had to have this baby finished by a certain amount of time, then that would be an exceptional repair. Actually tight bind gluing it to a piece of really nice Honduran mahogany, and then running it down your table saw. And then because, see, you will be doing binding out here on this edge anyway, and you can even see there's just no fretboard left. After I put the 12-inch radius on it, it freaking disappeared. It ended up being like 3.5 millimeter out here. And see, Ed, it was really cool because he mic'd a guitar that he likes. He was even able to give me the binding height, on the actual fretboard. So if you put this fretboard, which is hyper thin, on that lower, and then put binding on it, the binding would be so narrow and so chintzy, it would be embarrassing. It would be so noticeable that even the untrained eye would pick up on it and think, what happened there? Anyway, so does it suck? Absolutely. Yeah, it really does. Because especially after I got I'm not sure if I clarified it. Let me go ahead and just clarify this, because what happened was I was right at the threshold coming out of the gate with the S4S board. And I knew this thing's got to be perfect with absolutely no room for error, because once I do that final buffing with the 2000 grit sandpaper right there in the middle, that will be the original thickness of the pearl that I received from of the supplier where I got the pearl. So, and I thought, that's ridiculous, man. That is ridiculous that you're doing that because you're cutting it so close all the way on the front end. But it was kind of over the Christmas holidays, and I was thinking, I do crap like this all the time, so odds are it'll probably work out. But I failed to clarify that, verify that it truly was a true flat plane. It was really close, but what's kind of creepy, it's about almost 1 millimeter thinner down here than it is up here. So it just starts compounding and compounding and compounding. And then once you glue this down to your lower, you're now having to reshape the thickness of your lower in order to hit your final target of roughly 22 millimeter finished, from the back of the neck, back of the lower to the top of the fretboard, about 22 millimeter at the first fret, and then about 25 millimeter at the 11th fret. Okay. And with this fretboard right here, I don't have a problem fighting that stuff later on one of my own personal guitars, but I don't want to start manipulating this neck here in order to make that happen. So does it suck? Absolutely, it sucks because, as I had clarified, it's a really rare piece of wood. It's a very old growth. It's probably 30 some odd years of Pau-Ferro. We would call it Pau-Ferro. And even Ed was like, that's not that orange red crap that's all swirly and goofy looking. No, this is the real old stuff that has a real straight grain to it. But the fretboard I'm going to order, and I almost went ahead and ordered it a day or two ago, but I thought, no, I'm going to really, see, because I don't want to be out that money for that fretboard in the event this one actually just miraculously worked perfect and maybe grew a little bit overnight, but it didn't. So, and like I said, it sucked once I had to see, after your pearl is in, that's when you do your final verified flat plane. And then once you have that flat plane, now you're on a really large jig where you're going over to your routing station and you're actually routing the radius into it. And what happened after I had the machine, once I discovered, all right, here's the deal. Once I discovered that I had to machine it down thinner in order to get that perfectly flat plane, I knew that there was about a 99% chance I was going to be losing the fretboard for this job. But I was already at a point to where, well, I got to finish it because I got to find out just how bad is going to be. And actually bad is about 1 millimeter even worse than I thought it was going to be on the thinness out here. Again, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're going to build it up and then you're doing binding, because with the trapezoidal inlays, it is a fretboard that would always have the single piece of parchment binding. So, in other words, you can hide a multitude of sins up under here. Whatever you had to build, that's obviously not with a piece of cardboard, but I'm just showing mill thickness. If you're building up, you know, a 16th of an inch, an eighth of an inch, believe it or not, you could hide that with the binding. But again, you would be at the expense of tone. And if you ever damage this guitar, this would be hell to get off, because the luthier removing it would not know where the bottom is. And like if he removed the nut and he looked in there and he realized, oh, wait a minute, what the hell is going on here? I see some maple and I see some, what is that wood? And then I see something else. And in other words, it's all engineered up. He wouldn't know where to start going in with his hot knife in order to remove the fretboard from the neck lower. So all the better to go in with an actual Stuart McDonald fretboard. And you can see the thickness difference right there. So that's the Stuart McDonald fretboard, which will be coming. I probably will be able to get it by, what's today? Tuesday, probably Monday, Tuesday. according to the holidays, that that gold paint came really rocket fast. So I might be shocked and get it by Monday or something like that. But neither here nor there. So, and now you can see the side thicknesses as well. Now, obviously, that's a full 2¼ inch wide, but there's a lot more Stewart McDonald fretboard there than there is in my fretboard. Anyway, neither here nor there. So that's what happened. But nonetheless, it turned out really well. And as I had clarified, um, I didn't make that discovery until all the pearl was in. And would I have gone ahead and done this? Probably not. But the cool thing is, once I ordered the new fretboard, then the pearl will come with it as well. So it will all be coming in at the same time. And what I did about a week and a half ago, I usually just do these by hand with an X-Acto knife. And I was doing that again, and as I was talking to Ed, I broke the bit that I used to do that work. But I went ahead, just paused, and I actually made a jig for the actual specific pearl dimensions here, so that now I can put it on my pin router station. And I got a 3/32 inch double flute straight bit. It's only about $20, 19, $20 from Woodcraft. This is a Freud, and it's a solid carbide, so that'll last forever. But basically, I went ahead and built a jig. Just think of positive and negative space. I built a negative space jig that would allow me to imagine if you flip that jig. I'm not going to show it, but if you flip that jig over, and you would see the negative space locations of where these pearl would go, and then you'll have a pin router. You'll have a pin. Any of you guys that are woodworkers, you already know what a pin router, overhead router, whatever you want to call it. You'll have a pin in the table that sticks up, and then you just drop this down atop that pin, and then you just turn on your overhead routing station, and then you just bring it down according to the depth you need cut, and then it's just a matter of just going zip, 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 back and forth, clean it out, zip, 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 and then take it out, and then take an X-Acto knife. Take an X-Acto knife and just clean out the corners a little bit, and you get a really beautiful radius. So I had this one of them. I think it was this right here. I got a little bit loose, and I had to do a little bit of epoxy work. But the cool thing about the epoxy work, when you're doing your epoxy, all I did was just did the two-part. I just went 1-to-1 ratio on this, and then I mixed in the dark walnut, and let's see if we can get it to snap. I just did it. Well, it snapped earlier. There we go. There you go. You can hear it. There we go. We got a little bit of snap. So once it cures in about 10 days, it'll be snap, crackle, pop. So that'll be awesome. So even when you tint your epoxy, you're still getting a really brittle formula. Okay, let me check the time. All right, 18 minutes. And I've got major problems with my phone, my battery. In my phone, it is not charging very well. So I'm going to intentionally make this a very short video. So let me just stop talking about this melodramatic situation here, because I covered that enough to justify our reasoning that could we have worked with it? Yeah, but I'd had to have done some banjo work and stuff like that. This is not the job that you want to do that type of stuff on. Well, quite frankly, any job for a client, you wouldn't want to do that for a client. Unless, you were helping, unless they provided this and they were like, man, I'm in a pickle. I need someone to figure out how to stretch that fretboard. Then I would be saying, well, yeah, we'll do it. But, and it'll be incredible. It'll sound great, but it'll always be something that's kind of a hidden cricket that if you ever have to address it in the future, it would be somewhat nightmarish. Okay, so with that said, I'm gonna stop. But what it really boils down to, the way you assess everything, is, uh, and a lot of this is determined upon the fact that we have P90s, as I mentioned earlier, we have the P90s with the pretty sharp radius top, and then we've got the the pick guard, of course, and everything about this design. See, it comes out of the body at the 19th fret, so it's already pretty low, and it's a real low profile running guitar. But the cool thing, or I say the cool thing, the critical thing is that you hit your target of about 19 millimeter from the top of the body to the bottom edge of the string, the D and the G. EAD, and G. Yeah, D and the G. The bottom edge of the D and the G string, they need to land about between 18 millimeter and 19 millimeter. Anything higher, a little bit, it's okay. But what would happen if you built this guitar without a pick guard? Then you'd be okay to run this at about 17 to 18 millimeter. And I'm talking about the pitch of the neck, or either the thickness of the fretboard, and how it affects that string path, PATH. And see, and I'll try not to throw you, well, I'll just have to throw you a curveball. The fact that this fretboard is almost 1 millimeter thinner up here than it is up here is the only reason why this one landed. It landed at 15 millimeter below the frets, or off the top of the fretboard, but it really needed to be landing at about 16.5 millimeter, bare minimum. That's bare minimum. And that's if you're really not running fretboard pick guard. Once you put the pick guard in there and you're running it off of this fretboard here, this thing is going to feel lower than a Fender Stratocaster, and that ain't the guitar we're building. And that's when I began to realize, as soon as I realized that I had to level that center line, I was thinking, oh, you know what? Well, at a minimum, I can't stop, because I got to go ahead and just finish the job, because this pearl set is in. It's not like I'm going to chisel the pearl out, and put it in a different fretboard. But I realized right then, pretty fairly soon, that I wasn't going to be able to use it on this guitar. But I kept forging ahead, as I've already covered. But once I put it on here, how you make that a final determination is you come up here like this, and you know that you're wanting to hit in that location right there. And then I clamped that off, and I measured from the top of the body to the bottom edge of that plane right there. And what it really needs to be at a bare minimum with this is 17 millimeter. Because, see, you're going to get the thickness of the fret plus the height of the string above the fret, and then that would take you on up closer to 19 millimeter. So if this one needed to hit at about 17 or a little bit over 17, once I measured it and it was just barely kissing 15 millimeter, man, we're 2 millimeter away from our target. And would it have worked without a pick guard? Yes, barely. But the P90, well, it wouldn't have mattered about the P90. Excuse me, because see, we're trying to make certain that this P90 is able to come up to a really beautiful, respectable height. If we bury that P90 any lower than that distance right there, we're going to start seeing the machine side of that pick guard. And what would that be? That would be a catastrophic custom guitar mistake, because you were not willing to go with a properly substantial thick fretboard. Okay, so anyway, there you have it. And see, this is some of my old rosewood as well. Even it is just ever so slightly thinner than the Stuart McDonald, but not much. Well, probably on a P90 equipped guitar, it probably would still be an issue. So once I measured that out at 15 millimeter, I realized we're nowhere near working. Okay, and I already covered the whole visual aspects of the binding would be so chintzy and thin, it would be embarrassing. It wouldn't even look like it wouldn't look like a custom guitar. It looked like a guitar that the fretboard was too thin. Okay, so with that said, let's open up the Stuart McDonald uh, paint. I started to call it parchment paint. It's not parchment. It's this is called antique gold, and I'll shoot straight with you. I was incredibly impressed in the turnaround time, and it came via FedEx. I can't remember when it was you had sent me that message, Ed. But and I'm not certain that if I clarified this to you. Oh, I know what it was. You had shot me a text and said, oh, by the way, we were talking about something. You said, oh, by the way, the pale, no, the vintage gold from Steve McDonald is in, and what is it called? Color tone aerosol guitar lacquer, antique gold, Okay, so so that's pretty cool. Whenever it was you shot me that message, I was kind of busy doing something, and I sent you a kind of a short text back. It's like, hey, don't, and you were like, oh, not that I was like, trying to in other words, he was being really cool. He was trying to tell me I'm not trying to manage your job behind the scenes. But I shot him a message back. I was like, no, man, it's a team effort, and I appreciate that because when I was going on their website a few weeks back, wanting to buy this stuff and all this fretboard, and see, that's I'm gonna try not to sound like my mother here. About 3 weeks ago, this was out of stock, and there was this note that says, to be determined. We have no idea when it's going to be back in stock. So I'm sitting there going, F me, my God, I needed this, I needed this, I needed this, I needed that, I needed this, but in this thickness and in that species of wood. And I was sitting there trying to figure out how in the hell to pull it off where you don't buy this for X number of dollars and that's all you get, and you had to pay $20 of shipping. So I say that to say this: I was kind of holding my breath, waiting out for that to be in stock, and I kept checking, it wasn't there. And then all of a sudden, when Ed shot me that message, said, "Hey, I found that it actually is in stock." I was sitting there thinking, he's probably looking at the wrong color, but nonetheless, it was in stock. And with that said, if I had known that was going to be a problem, I could have gone ahead and ordered the fretboard with this. And rather than when we just opened that box, this box would be about that long and there would be a fretboard in there. So, kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And fortunately, Stewmac's pretty good about turnaround. It's just, they're a pain in the ass as far as shipping. They're extremely expensive. And I think this ended up being like 30, I'm not complaining. It ended up being like $38, 35 to closer to $40 by the time it's all said and done. But what it is an absolutely incredible product that I will be able to do an enormous amount of work with this. And I would probably be able to do probably 7 to 10 guitars, just the tops, like if you're doing gold tops or something like that, because you're going to do just enough to get your color base. And then see, I've got actual gold nitro lacquers that I work with. And I even got this used to be a tobacco, but I turned it into a bronze gold. This is a killer vintage. And when you start mixing these vintage golds together, like my own custom colors, you start looking circa 1952 barfly, heavily smoked out. That's something you can't buy in the can. But it's difficult because you don't know really what it's going to look like until you get it shot. And I've got a hollow body Explorer replica that's my personal guitar on the other side of the shop. That it's considerably darker than that right there. But it's I don't think it's something that we would have wanted to do on Ed's guitar. Okay, so we got our lacquer in, and I hope that makes sense, Ed, why I didn't order this, and I really appreciate you letting me know that was in stock, because I probably would have gotten in a bad mood and think, Gary, this is just great. All these weekend warrior guitar builders around Christmas had bought all of our paint, and the fact that they actually got it back in stock was a pretty cool thing. So that will allow this to be the next operation for this guitar right here. And what's going to happen is it's not really going to slow us down. Uh, I don't think it's going to slow us down at all because what's about to happen, this guitar was about to go in the paint booth and get, a couple of hours worth of paint work done each day, nitro work done each day, and then it's hanging there overnight. So what do? Twiddle your thumbs. And with that said, the cool thing about it, it landed at an absolutely incredible opportunity. I'm not necessarily talking about this right here, but and this job will take precedence. But I sold another guitar a few days ago, and it's the Black Explorer for Sam. And Sam, if you're watching this, Sam's in Virginia, so we're going to be finishing that guitar out for Sam. And what is it? Well, it's a Black Nitro cellulose. I'm looking at it. 58 Explorer replica, identical to this guitar, but it's a quarter sawn poplar body. It's already painted. I built it like 2 years ago, year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and it's got from this sister family the old growth rosewood fretboard. It's really beautiful, and I don't want to show it in this video because I need to get this video ended so I can get it uploaded. So my phone won't die trying to upload the actual video. So that's why I'm being short. But as soon as I finish this video, get it uploaded, and then get my phone recharged, or hopefully it won't be completely exhausted, then I'm going to do an immediate follow-up video. Will be video 1 for Sam's how to build a custom 58 Explorer that's black nitro, and for Sam in Virginia or something like that. But and speaking of that, Sam, I'm not going to give out your personal information thing. But when I do a video series for someone, I'm always talking about either Eric or Ed or Rick or Chad or just guys by first name basis, or Arturo. There's a guy out in Santa Cruz that we built a killer sapphire blue Explorer replica for Arturo, or I did, and used a maple fretboard, and we put shark fin inlays per Jackson. That was a very difficult job, but that was a bizarre guitar. It was so cool after it was finished. And then we did a Tessie kill switch. That's the one where I was talking about, where we did the Tessie kill switch. Here I am running my mouth, dragging out this video. That's the one where we did the Tessie kill switch right there. So anyway, so anytime I talk about someone's project, I always keep it on a first name basis. So, and I don't even share you guys that I'm doing business for. I don't share y'all's numbers with my other clients and whatnot, unless someone asks for some sort of reference or something. Then I would ask someone if it's okay. But so far, I haven't had to do that. So just using these videos to get us there. But it is what it is, and I'm going to stop because it's not the end of the world, and there'll be some sort of use for this in the future. And I even got to think, I thought, well, this might be an incredible opportunity to just maybe, and I won't spend too much time with this other than just a brief moment. I have done this before in custom guitars where I did not have a binding. You can do that design right there. It's really beautiful. And I thought about maybe using that and just building like a classical guitar, because I've got some really beautiful old rosewood over there, and the back's already cut out. And I'd kind of been considering building my first classical guitar, true acoustic, like a, Torres or Ramez or whatever the guy's name is, the true Italian classical. And that's the way you could use this fretboard. Or if you wanted to, you could do the maple veneer under it onto the mahogany lower at the neck, and let it be an actual accent where the maple actually went up on the top of the guitar, the top of the guitar somehow or another. And anyway, so there's ways to work with that, and I'll repurpose it somehow or another. But I hope that makes sense, Ed, as to why we wouldn't want to use it on your guitar, because it would have just ended up being this endless nightmare of adding material and trying to build it up. And then the fact that it was a different thickness down here as it is out here would have been really compounded, because you wouldn't have really known exactly where this was going to land. And I hope that doesn't sound like I didn't know what the hell I was doing. It's just I was trying to work with a board that I was really cutting it way too close to begin with. But anyway, neither here nor there. It happens. And I'll just stop, because if I don't stop, I'll continue talking and this video will not end. So going once, going twice. Let me look at the table. I don't think there's anything else to talk about other than the reason I brought up Sam's project. Sam's project is going to be a very quick project, because I'm just assembling the guitar back per the specifications. And it's funny, I was kind of expecting him to want me to make some changes, and he was like, "Oh no, I'll just take it just like it is." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's rare. I've never had that happen." So basically, I'll just be putting his guitar back together, and I might do one or two videos of doing Sam's project, but try to get it shipped out early next week, if not by middle of next week, because I'll talk about this in your video, Sam. But I had to order um, the parchment, and it's going to be here tomorrow. So if you're watching this video series, you'll know what I'm talking about. So that said, I don't think Ed's project is going to be uh, slowing down. I'm looking at the table. Slowed down for any reason at all. And as paint's drying here, well, then I'll be building his new fretboard and off camera, because as I told Ed, this is not something I can even attempt to do where I feel like someone's over my shoulder and I'm trying to explain it, because I'm literally, or I was hovering over this thing basically with an X-Acto knife doing all the final cleanup work. And then I realized I got to go ahead and build that jig so I can machine 90% of the bulk out, as long as I'm staying with the same scale. And what is the scale? Exactly what I'm holding here. And what is this? This is the modern scale Gibson Les Paul. Any pick your poison Gibson. This is a 20. They call it the 24 3/4, but it is 24.625 inches, 625 thousandths. And I don't know the metric. I think it's 628 point something, maybe 53 millimeter. It's your modern scale. And with that said, it intonates well, and that's why I went ahead and just built the jig, because anything I do as a replica or a restoration is most likely always going to be this modern scale. Okay? So with that said, I'll end the video. I appreciate you guys dropping in. I hope it wasn't a waste of time. I didn't get to do any work, but there wasn't really anything to do other than just talk about redeeming myself for trying to make that 5.5 millimeter neck fretboard turn into a 6 millimeter fretboard, and you just can't do it, especially when you have to do additional machine work. All right, so I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.